Greetings, this is Griff Ruby, the Nostalgia Catholic, with another Isaac Asimov short story. And this one is the title given to this book, which is a collection of robot stories. However, the story Robot Visions, which heads off this collection, was actually first released in this bound volume. Later on, it would also see publication in his magazine, Isaac Asimov's science fiction magazine, with some distinctive artwork. We'll try to make sure we get back to that. Now, so Isaac Asimov's Robot Visions. Now, this is another story about robots. These are, they seem to be in the general tradition of the three laws, even though the three laws in this case are not even mentioned at all. But the robots are named kind of the same way, and they seem to act kind of that way. Maybe. So, it's a fairly straightforward story. In fact, in the book we even have one illustration. Here's a robot in this special chair that's all part of like a time machine. You can't go into the past, but once you build a time machine, you can go into the future and come back to the present. Okay, that's a reasonable set of rules, make it not too ridiculously impossible. So the robot they decided to send this robot forward a couple hundred years. They want to know, is humanity still around? Is the planet still okay? What's happening? And they get there and they find that society is very nice, very civilized, rather decentralized, all in all, but on the whole, doing rather well. The planet seems to be getting rebalanced, and it's like a garden almost. And the population, after some brief comment about a sad time that nobody wanted to talk about in any detail, brought the population to maybe a little bit under 1 billion. I guess that's something you don't want to talk about, huh? And they don't want to talk about it either. Although I think when we get to the end of the story, there is kind of a hint about this. So what is this? The robot has gone in the future. He actually spent 5 years just wandering around looking at stuff. He even got, they treated him very carefully. They let him see pretty much anything he could think of to ask for to see. They even took him to some of these other places in space. There was apparently a fairly strong, thriving, and even growing community on the moon, and some other explorations into Mars. They had something on Phobos and something in orbit around Mars, and there were landings on the surface of Mars, but it still remained to be seen what they wanted to do with that just yet. So, on the whole, things were just, tickety-boo going forward. So, after spending 5 years exploring this Earth of 200 years in the future, or was it 300 anyway, the robot then comes back to literally just an instant after the time that he left. So, and he's able, you could see he's had a few years wear and tear, but on the whole, it's the same robot, comes to the same place, and he's got a lot to report. And it turns out, well, one interesting thing was, apparently his showing up there was in some vague way expected. We'll find out about that later on, or you read the story, you find out. And they said, well, so it's really a peaceful civilization. Does anybody have any robots? No, nobody seems to have robots. So do any cities exist? Well, no longer as such, although some of the great cities are preserved in the form they had at their peak. The whole of Manhattan Island is this vast museum of what was there as a city at one time that one could look at if one wanted to, full scale, and with tremendous eye for detail and everything beautifully preserved. Okay, they've even remembered the heritage, and that could be said of a number of other cities as well. So, I mean, there's just the cultural heritages are all preserved, everything's kept alive, and you've got this civilization that looks all peaceful and wonderful. So, what's wrong with that? Well, there's this one other character who's among those characters who built this time machine and sent this robot specially made for this purpose and program to go to the future, look around for however long, 5 years it ended up being, and then to come back to the same spot, or maybe an instant afterwards. You see it flicker, but that's all. And then report back with everything that it saw. And it did. That's exactly what it did. But there's this one character among the scientists and so forth who are doing this project. A character who is, as it turns out, well, alright, this is kind of a problematic narrator situation. The person narrating the story is among these temporal scientists, but the least of them in a certain way, because he's only a robot, or merely a robot. But as a robot, he's able to ask this returning robot from the future if everybody else has lost interest in that, and he's kind of talked anybody out of trying to look at the times in between, to see more of what were those sad times all about, and so forth. And then they're not paying much attention, and he comes up to the robot and asks him another number of other questions that nobody else thought to ask. I won't spoil the story. But it's a doozy. And all I can say is there's some reasons why things happened that probably have something to do with that sad time that's not very well described and never is. And in the end, also something to do with why it is his own arrival was known and expected. So, anyway, it's a fun little story. And as I said, you have that one piece of artwork for it there. And you have some more associated with this magazine. This story got the cover, by the way. Sort of. The robot's reading some other issue of Isaac Asimov's magazine. I have not tracked down which issue that is, or if that's even a real issue. But at any rate, it's a new robot story by Isaac Asimov. And the table of contents mentions it right here. Robot Visions, page 24, Isaac Asimov. So you get to page 24. And here's some more artwork by the same person who did the artwork on the cover. And, well, there's some years kind of indicating time travel. Other than that, the robot could have been anything. Doesn't really matter. There's planet Earth. And I guess there's inside this bubble right there. Okay. And it reads Robot Visions by Isaac Asimov. The book was published in 1990, so the story is copyright 1990. But this is already the April 1991 edition of Isaac Asimov. So this came out literally the next calendar year. So, alright, Robot Visions by Isaac Asimov. What must be sacrificed to fulfill RG-32's vision of Earth's idyllic future? Art, by the way, was by Gary Freeman. And the text, however, once you get to the story, seems to be, so far as I can tell, identical to the text as contained in the book. Anyway, all of that being the case, I'm not going to spoil the story. It's worth reading. Those are two places you can find it. And yes, as is the case with all these other books, I like to show the original hardcover But so far as I know, all of these hardcovers have also been released on much more available and less expensive paperbacks. It might even do to check to see if there's Kindle editions. Some may have them, but probably not too many. I don't know. But at any rate, one can read the story and find out why was everything like this, and what did the one robot character that was among those sending the other robot to the future, asking that robot and finding out. It's worth finding out. All right. Thanks for listening.